Good morning. Wednesday, April 23rd, here in Ways and Means, we are beginning our work with H 364, an act relating to approval of the annexation of property by the Village of Swanton. Tucker Anderson, if you could please join us and take us through this charter change. And I believe the reporter of the bill from GovOps is with us if we have any questions. Thank you so much, Representative.
Well, good morning, everyone. Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel. For the record, I'm attempting to very slowly bring this up for you all. Take just.
That's okay. I'm just gonna finish looking through all my pieces of paper here.
Start my laptop over there.
Ed Barnett has some like fun new trick for Zoom sharing and prepping for it, if you wanted to ever spend a moment with him. He's really excited about it.
It has all sorts of awesome tricks that I wish I knew. Some of them math related.
Tell me others.
Okay. I will bring up H 364 for you in just a moment, but to start, this is a somewhat unique charter adjacent bill in that it is not actually amending a charter language. It is not granting or removing authority from a particular municipality. It is a session law provision that is navigating a curiosity in a village charter. And that curiosity is that the village of Swanton is the only incorporated village in the state of Vermont that requires the General Assembly to approve the annexation of territory. All other incorporated villages in the state operate under general law, which allows territory to be annexed upon the consent of the residents of the territory to be annexed. There's an annexation procedure that is set out in Title 24 for villages. It's just that the village of Swanton in Section 2, subsection E of their charter states that property will only be annexed upon the approval and consent of the General Assembly. So that's why this bill is in front of you. The particular proposal contains.
Are there other, are you aware of other municipal charters that have that language, or is Swanton's the only one?
This is the one.
And are they removing that section so they don't have to do this again?
They are not.
Oh,
They
fun times here.
like.
I really love it when you come in, Tucker.
So the particular proposal that the village is putting out there is to acquire a property at 124 First Street, which is outside the current bounds of the village. It is contiguous with the village boundaries and is proposed to house some of the village's municipal offices, including some of their utilities. It will also make space for the expansion of the village police department so that they can serve the town. The bill is very simple. Subsection A contains the approval of the annexation. Subsection B contains information about where the parcel is located and how the approval process took place at the local level. Subsection C explains why the bill is here, which is that Section 2E of the village charter requiring the approval of the General Assembly. And then subsection D states expressly that the General Assembly approves the alteration of village boundaries and the annexation of the property at 124. Sorry, I forgot to scroll through.
Gosh, now you have, thank you.
You may be wondering why this is here, and anytime property is moving between municipal corporations, I think that those bills are referred to your committee. So you might remember creation of the city of Essex Junction as an example. And that's because grand lists are being affected whenever we're moving real property between corporations. And in this case, this real property would now be on two grand lists, the village and the town.
And that happens, does that happen somewhat regular? I mean, villages are within towns, right? That happens regularly.
Yes.
Okay. Any further questions? or any questions. Yes, Representative Brennan.
Was there a vote of the population of the voters on either side here?
These votes take place by the legislative bodies of the respective corporations.
The
And,
select board,
right,
okay,
and in this case, the underlying annexation procedures in general law might require, in fact, do require the property owners to either vote or consent to the annexation. But in this case, the village owns this property. So they're the property owner that would be consenting, and the village trustees are the ones that held the vote. And it's the town select board also heard this proposal and voted to approve.
and my other question is, how can it be that it's on both grand lists?
Because villages are lesser incorporated municipal corporations, right? So their powers are, and authority are a layer over the town. So the property that is within an incorporated village is simultaneously within the surrounding town and within the village. So it's subject to town taxation and subject to any additional taxes that are authorized by the village and the village board of trustees.
But in this case, it's owned by the municipalities.
Correct.
So does that mean we pay pilot on it or something, or no?
It's not state property, so it wouldn't be subject to pilot grant payments. But all real property within a municipality will show up on the grand list, even if it's owned by a municipal corporation or the state, because it's accounted for in the,
So this doesn't cost the state anything, no change to state obligation at all.
to my knowledge, no.
Thank you.
Representative Kimball, do you have something?
Actually, Representative Brannigan asked the questions that I had.
Okay. Representative Muslin?
Yeah, and I think Terry, you just answered the question, which is I was wondering if it was gonna get taxed twice somehow, but since it's a subset, it's just, thank you.
Village property can be taxed twice, right? So it can be taxed by the village and by the surrounding town. That's not, thank you.
There's great.
But not by us. Like the state, the education fund does not tax the village and the town twice.
To
The municipalities do.
Taxes.
Yeah.
It's one tax for the town, one tax to keep the lights on in the village is the most common arrangement that I'm aware of.
But the education fund only taxes those properties once.
Correct.
Yes. Representative Bodie.
Does this have any impact on where we're moving in terms of grand list value? When we're considering creating new school districts and,
I don't see any relationship.
just in case there's some way.
The only outside impact that I would be aware of is that because you're shifting a boundary of a municipal corporation, you have to be updated on the state's mapping systems by VCGI. So as this moves forward, Ledge Council will send a notice to VCGI saying, hey, the boundaries of a municipal corporation are changing.
Oh, I didn't know you did that.
Yes.
That's so
We
fun. Thank
always
you.
try to keep John Adams aware of when we're shifting those map lines.
Wonderful.
John Adams,
Our director of VCGI.
okay.
He came in about a month ago to this. Okay, I see no more questions for Tucker. Great. Thank you very much, Tucker.
Thank you all.
Would you like a motion?
So much so, thank you.
To find H364 favorable?
Did you just move?
Yeah, I will move
64?
to find H364.
Wonderful.
What do you
Representative Wazazak moves that we find H 364 favorable. Any discussion?
Yeah, could we ask Representative Hango what the vote was on the committee?
Sure.
I don't have the representative Lisa Hango on the record, reporter of the bill, government operations and military affairs. I do not have. It's in my other. But I believe it was unanimous of all the members present in committee that day.
It says on it was 10-01. Yes, so I
Thank you.
think Representative Hango is correct.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk could please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan.
Yes.
I'll vote yes as Representative Burkhart, Representative Feltes.
Yes.
Representative Higby,
Yes.
Representative Holcomb,
Yes.
Representative Kimball.
Yes.
Representative Maslin.
Yeah.
Representative Odie,
Yes.
Representative Wazazak,
Yes.
Representative Canfield,
Yes.
Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
And you have voted the bill favorable, 11-0.
Thanks. Representative Higley, would you like to report this?
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Okay, entirely switching gears to H483, which is where we will be spending our time for the rest of the day. Reminder, we are calling it H483 because that seems like the easiest way to title this agenda item, but H483 has not met crossover, and so likely we're talking about S51. But it seems preemptive to call it that, so if anyone wants, anyway. Just so. I love this time in the session. It's so exciting.
It's a little confusing.
It's so confusing. Representative Lipsky, would you like to join us? So Representative Lipsky brought an amendment to H483 that he is going to discuss with us now and is where we will be spending most of our attention for the rest of the day.
Thank you, Chairman Kornheiser. Thank you, Vice Chair, and all other members for having me. My name is Jed Lipsky, Representative. I sit on the Agriculture, Food Resiliency and Forestry Committee, 2 doors down the hall. I'm a member of the Rural Caucus, and I'm a member of the National Guard and Veteran Affairs Caucus. And I come in peace and in positivity today.
And we all do, yes, thank you.
And frankly, a lot of joy to finally get to have a public committee dialogue on the amendment that I propose, and I'll follow your lead, Madam Chair, of calling it H4A. So thank you. With that, I'm going to try to summarize what my amendment proposed to do that never was delivered, but it is today. And it basically,
And I'm sorry, we had a long pause while we finished the education bill, but we are back at it.
I'm deeply grateful. It means a lot. But my amendment added a subdivision to the bill's purpose section to reflect the change being made. Specifically, the bill now exempts military retirement and survivor benefit income from Vermont income tax. It removes the subdivision in current law, applying to partial exemption to U.S. military retirement, because that is no longer necessary because all military retirement income will be exempt. And finally, it amends the definition of, quote, taxable income, unquote, to exclude U.S. military retirement income and U.S. military survivor benefit income received by the surviving spouse or dependent of the deceased service member. But before I get into some, thoughts about my presentation today is going to focus on, and I'm going to attempt to differentiate all the good forms of public service, professional public service of all stripes, and focus on the uniqueness, and I'll repeat that word uniqueness several times this morning, of military service compared to other professional organizations and professions. So the main reasons that I'm summarizing that you might want to consider supporting this amendment are to respect the unique nature of 20 years of military service. And it can't be repeated enough. This is not a veteran's benefit. This is a benefit, an exemption for retirees, and to be qualified as a retiree, you have to have served honorably for 20 or 20 plus years, more than 10. So that distinction is important because it's a commitment of, in many cases, a lifetime, or the best years, or typically the most productive years of his life. So that's an aspect of the uniqueness of 20 years of military service. And I just saw that General Harder walked in, and I assume he's going to focus some of his testimony on broad aspect of what retirees or guardsmen were attracted to come to Vermont because of the caliber, quite frankly, of the Vermont Guard and the Vermont Air National Guard. But I will let him focus on that. And it creates an incentive to help grow Vermont's workforce. Many of these folks, particularly if they're attached to the Vermont Guard, are living here. If they have children or families, children are in local schools and they become part of the fabric of our state. And there's this unique phenomenon that 47 other states of the United States currently exempt retirees and survivors benefits from compensation in their states. And, you know, for the past several years, some have presented the narrative that I was talking about, that taxing military pensions mean Vermont would have to do the same for other professions. I won't say conflating tax relief for the military with others. In my view, it's not a valid comparison due to the uniqueness of military service. And Madam Chairman, I'm going to tell you a little anecdote that will give some context that I think reflects the uniqueness of military service. It's personal, so I'm going back, I'm going to say 13 years. And I get a phone call up in Lamar County that my son was, had gotten brought, he was in Afghanistan, he was part of a ODA unit, and his MOS was he's Special Forces Combat Medic, he's what's called a 18 Delta. You got to give me a little, just slight break. So you never want a phone call from a hospital, not in, I'm doing okay, Dad, but there's something wrong with me, and I've been here for a few days. I can't get a handle on. I've got some functions that are declining. I think they're shipping me to Landstuhl, and those of you who don't know, it's a medical facility in Germany, U.S. military. So when you get there, you know, update me. You can't call, you can't text, you can't FaceTime. They're out there. A few days go by from Landstuhl. Said, Dad, they're sending me to Walter Reed because I'm keep declining and they can't get a handle on this. I called his mother, my ex-wife, and her husband. I said, you know, we got to go down to Washington. So we met up down there. And my son, he said, you know, I don't know, they got me on some medications, feeling better, a little better. In fact, next day, look, actually I'm feeling pretty good. Now, what happens is when someone has been bounced around from medical facilities, they're looking to track them out. You need to be in rehab, you need recovery. And so they're advocates for special forces, soldiers, whatever. And my son now is normal temperature, a lot of vitals are absolutely normal. I don't know what they did. He said, Dad, do not let them take me out on one of these sidetracks. I need to get back to my team now. And so you look in your child's eye and you say, I will do all I can. He said, so it took another few days of advocating, and finally the commanding officer and the medical detail down at Walter Reed said, I'm remanding your son to go home for 4 days of home cooked meals. He's free to go back to his team. His mother fed him 3 meals, got him to plane, got him back to Afghanistan. Another 9 months before I ever see soldier back in UN. So this is an active duty soldier, still active duty. Whether it's Vermont Air Guard, Vermont National Guard, that same boy, when he was younger, was in Iraq. He had a 15-month deployment. There's no Christmases. There are no anniversaries. There are no siblings' birthdays. So that story, I'm sorry, I don't apologize for being who I am and being emotional, but what I'm saying, there is something very unique when you can be asked to be gone for 15 months or 1 year or 7 months or 6 months. So I could go on. That's the uniqueness part. And if you can grasp that, and I will always be positive and respectful of whether you're a firefighter or a police officer or a medic. But I know all the skills that it takes for these soldiers, whether they're guardsmen or active duty, regardless of the branch, they can bring to Vermont communities. It is what there isn't a community in the state that doesn't need teachers, medics, nurses, analysts, counselors. I just think it's a win-win for the state. And yes, there's a cost. There's a fiscal note, which you're familiar with. I don't know where it stands I hear it's still in the budget. It's going to move along. So, I'm actually going to let General Harder take the next 3 pages of my notes because he does better and felt wrong out. But I would close on this note that if we, or pardon me, you, or we the body can start with military retirees and survivors as a starting category this session, I think it would be a very meaningful and appropriate first step due to the fact that there are 47 other states that do this. So there's a constitutional, barrier that's been crossed, and it's as far as we're not distinguishing illegally or unconstitutionally one type of retirees over another. I don't have a law degree and I don't have a college degree, so I'm doing the best I can, but you get what I'm saying. And then, depending on circumstances, another year and other advocates and needs, this could be expanded if down the road, but I would love to see our body and this committee start with military retirees and survivors. And with that, if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for joining us, Representative Lipsky, and sharing your story. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Jed.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, committee.
And we don't often get to have a lot of feelings in this room, so I appreciate you bringing some in.
Well, I have feelings all the time.
Yeah, I do too.
Unfortunately. I'm okay. Good morning or good morning. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Jed.
Gary DeGasta?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I thank the committee for permitting me to provide testimony in support of eliminating Vermont state income tax on military retirement and military survivor pensions. For the record, my name is Gary DeGasta. I am a retired U.S. Army Medical Department Colonel. I also am a retired U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Senior Healthcare Executive, and for 2 decades, I served as Executive Director of the White River Junction VA Medical Center. As a matter of full disclosure, I should inform the committee that presently I serve as the Chairperson, Governor's Veterans Advisory Council, and President of the Board of Trustees of the Vermont Veterans Home in Bennington, Vermont. Proposals to exempt military retiree pay, that is pensions, from Vermont state income taxes are not new and have been presented to legislators and governors of both parties for over 3 decades. The risk aversion rationale cited for not supporting these tax exemption proposals have remained basically unchanged over the years and have focused on 2 areas. First, the projected loss of tax revenues. While the overwhelming majority of other states have found their initial short-term losses of tax revenues are invariably overcome in the long run, Vermont continues to be an outlier in its failure to exempt retiree pensions and survivor benefits from state income taxes. Doing the right thing for our men and women who during a career of 20 years or more of service and have put themselves in harm's way not only can benefit the state, but actually will provide financial dividends. Vermont has little choice and must address its demographic crisis of fewer and fewer working residents and a growing number of senior citizens. There are simply not enough workers to keep our economy going and growing. Military retirees are good citizens who pay taxes. They not only bring to their states of residence their families and invariably working spouse and school-aged children and resources, federal pensions and health care, but also significant employment potential, which is typically in the age band our state is working to attract, those of the age of 30 to 40 years of age. I submit that eliminating the tax on their retirement benefits will be an important first step to attract to Vermont and retain within Vermont veterans and their families, those citizens who strengthen our state's economy and workforce and will actually increase tax revenue. Unfortunately, data from 2004 to 2019 evidences only incremental growth in Vermont's military retirement population from 3,402 to 3,904. This unimpressive increase, in part, may be due to media reports such as Kiplinger.com, which identifies Vermont at the bottom for the worst states to retire in due to taxes, and to WalletHub.com, which ranks Vermont at the bottom for best places to work for military retirees. Second, other groups will expect the same tax consideration. First responders, law enforcement officials, firefighters, EMS, and other groups are professionals who make sacrifices doing work that routinely places them at risk. There are key differences between the commitment and sacrifices expected of civilian first responders and military members of the armed services. Excuse me, members of the armed services know in advance the challenges and risks that come with service and still choose to serve their state and our nation. They take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. In so doing, they commit exposure to all sorts of conditions and risks. They can be expected to endure extended deployments away from home and family, often to austere, dangerous, and challenging environments, exposure to burn pits, dust, poor air and water quality. They are placed at risk for serious injury of death based on national defense policy, decisions by Congress and the President. They can expect to experience extreme working conditions to include extended work days and 7 days a week. They're expected to adhere to employment terms and conditions dictated by Congress and the Department of Defense policies and procedures. Earned compensation benefits prescribed by Congress. The military does not have a union to negotiate more favorable pay. They are held to a higher level of accountability, conduct, and integrity. The general public expects military members to serve as an example. They encourage service commitment and cannot just say, "I quit," and seek employment elsewhere. By comparison, military responders have a certain level of control over their employment conditions. Most are supported by unions that negotiate their working hours, compensation, and working conditions. They are not required to deploy around the world in defense of U.S. interests, peacekeeping, and stability operations based on national defense policy decisions. Eliminating state income tax for military retirees and military survivors is not a silver bullet. It will not resolve all issues. However, stemming the exodus of military retirees from the state, as well as attracting new retirees, offer the potential to increase the inflow of first-class citizens and a not insignificant number of federal dollars to the Vermont economy. For example, in January 2025, the Vermont Joint Fiscal Office noted Vermont's less than 4,000 military retirees received approximately $90.8 million in benefits payments. In its deliberations, I urge the committee to not forget about dependents of military retirees, military survivors, those who receive compensation under the Survivor Benefits Plan. I'll talk about this a little bit later. Vermont can and should make itself more attractive, specifically in the prior service military market. Not taxing military pensions is an important tool in making Vermont a destination for military retirees and their families. The passage of legislation to exempt military retirement pay from Vermont state income taxes would send an important message to military veterans and retirees looking to stay in or return to the state, or those concerning moving here from other states. That is, Vermont really does care about and support its veterans and their families, and the Green Mountain State welcomes them. I'd now like to provide a few remarks about information and data provided by the Vermont's Joint Fiscal Office, as well as some additional data relating to military retirees and military survivors. Earlier this year, the Joint Fiscal Office, JFO, made an important distinction between military retirees and veterans. The terms are used interchangeably, but refer to different groups of people. A veteran refers to any person who has served any length of time in any military service branch. A military retiree is a veteran who has spent at least 20 years in uniformed services and has since left the military. Military retirees are always veterans, but veterans are not always military retirees. Only military retirees are eligible to receive military retirement benefits, so exempting that income from taxation not only affects that group's tax liability. I would be remiss if I did not add comments about a very important third group, military survivors. Military survivors are those who receive compensation under the Survivor Benefit Plan. Members of the military can elect to participate in SBP, Survivors Benefit Plan, allowing a retiree to ensure after death a continuous lifetime annuity for their dependents. The maximum Survivor Benefit Plan annuity is based on 55% of the retiree's members' pay. It's worthwhile to again point out that Vermont and California are the only two states that continue to fully tax survivor benefits. Recent data available from Vermont Joint Fiscal Office reveal that there are approximately 34,000 veterans, 3,900 military retirees, and 750 survivors who live in Vermont. The JFO has estimated that Vermont's military retirees receive approximately $90.8 million in benefits payments, or an average of $25,269 per recipient. The total annual benefits payments to military survivors equates to approximately $8.9 million, or $11,808 on average per recipient. A full exemption of military benefits would reduce Vermont's personal income tax revenues by $3.9 million. Using JFO's updated and validated numbers, a recent economic model estimates that military retirees' value-added contributions to the state include military retirees inject nearly $91 million annually into Vermont's economy. Local spending from these benefits drives over $1.8 million in economic activity. And finally, the activity supports nearly 1,000 jobs statewide. In summary, removing barriers to military retirees would level the playing field between Vermont and its surrounding states, all currently exempt military retirement benefits. Utilizing its unique assets, natural beauty, peaceful and safe environment to raise children, and opportunities for outdoor recreation, Vermont should be able to successfully compete for and attract military retirees. Again, those good citizens who bring with them decades of experience, valuable skills, and employment potential precisely in the age band Vermont is seeking to acquire. They would bring with them also a family, which more than likely will include a working age spouse and school age children. Plus, they also bring with them their own federal healthcare benefits through TRICARE. I thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on this important matter for Vermont veterans, its military retirees, and military survivors. I would gladly respond to any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. DeGusta, thank you for your service and thank you for coming to us today. I just have a question because Vermont appears from your testimony and others that we've heard to be absolutely the worst place to retire. But Vermont's doing okay by some measures as a percent of the population of military retirees that are here. Just wondering how you came to Vermont and how other military retirees you know also came to Vermont. What, despite their better judgment.
I came to Vermont because of my position at the VA. I was appointed to serve as the director of the VA in White River Junction. I stayed in Vermont because I really have grown to love the state. I'm a native New Yorker, but I've been here now for close to 40 years, and if you help me, I will stay a bit longer. Your comment about other folks coming to the state, I know as case examples of individuals over the last few weeks that have said to us, the Governor's Veterans Advisory Council, that they would actually come to the state but for military retirement pay. Now, as I said, military retirement pay exemption is not a silver bullet. Vermont's taxes are notoriously high. But Vermont also has wonderful attractions that could bring young families to the state who would raise their children here, who would actually contribute to the state. But the tax on military pensions keeps them away. And this has been proven time and time again. And you'll undoubtedly hear from the Adjutant General and Deputy Adjutant General about the impact the tax has on its retirees from the National Guard who choose immediately after retiring to leave the state. A tragedy, a loss of great talent. So I hope I answered your question. I'll be glad to respond further if you wish.
Good, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Representative Holcomb?
Hi, thank you for coming in. It's Representative Rebecca Holcomb, and I certainly hope we keep you here because I don't know who will man the grill and cook the hamburgers at a variety of events, so we need to keep you around.
Thank you. Veterans do contribute to their community.
Oh, they sure do. I actually was hoping to take advantage of your presence on a related issue that's not actually specific to this, and I think Representative Lipsky's testimony, which is very powerful, speaks to this as well. We all know many people, including in Norwich, who served honorably under tremendously difficult circumstances, and some of them were wounded in combat. Some of them were not able to continue for a variety of reasons. What kind of benefits do those individuals have? And how is it to live in Vermont for those individuals?
Well, there are a number of things. You talked about individuals wounded in combat. Those individuals generally receive compensation from the Department of Veterans Affairs through their service-connected disability. Now, again, differentiate here. Service-connected disability is a disability that's incurred in or aggravated by military service. And that would be individuals wounded in combat, injured in combat, or individuals who have just injured while they're serving in the military. That compensation comes from the Department of Veterans Affairs.
What about individuals who have served honorably and don't stay in the military for 20 years?
They are, like every one of us around the table here, citizens of the state. They're not entitled to anything other than the honor of having served their country. I can't think of any other benefits that they would be entitled to unless it happens to be service related.
Can I follow up on that question? So we have a public hearing, and by we, I mean the Vermont House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs, not actually this committee, has a public hearing Wednesday, April 30th, which is, I guess, next Wednesday, if I'm following the calendar, on sort of more generally issues of Veterans Affairs. But I would love to get sort of a preview on your thoughts on what we could be doing for the full 34,000 veterans in our state that we're not doing as a state.
The data that I've looked at over the years that I've been here points out that while Vermont contends that it is very strong supporter of veterans and, the Green Mountain Boys and all the great and wonderful things that veterans provide to the state, when you look overall at the data, Vermont does not rank terribly well with other states by comparison. And that includes a full range of benefits, and I'm not sure I can enumerate them right at this moment, but clearly other states offer a whole series of other benefits that Vermont does not offer. And the data over the years, I've looked at everything from reports from state and national organization points to this fact. I could gladly make some of that available if you are so interested.
Yeah, do you have any examples at
Well, I would point out that currently Vermont does a good job of stating that it supports veterans, but when in reality, everything from entitlements, the Guard has done a marvelous job in recent years in garnering benefits for its members, for family members who come to the state who have difficulty finding a job, believe it or not, because of issues associated with their professional backgrounds and other related matters such as that. I'm sure the specifics on that can best be provided by the Adjutant General, General Knight, or Deputy Adjutant General, General Harder. But I specifically don't have that information.
And anything we could be doing better for veterans than what we're doing now.
Well, the sheer fact that you are addressing this issue, which I have stated has been in the works for nearly 30 years and still has not been able to come to fruition, I think is a step forward. I strongly urge that this committee, as well as the other committees of the legislature, take seriously its commitment to veterans and provide this tax relief. Again, it is not a silver bullet, but is a step in the right direction.
Thank you.
I have a question of clarification. Good morning, Gary. When you were talking about value added contributions, retirees contribute to the state, you mentioned local spending from these benefits drives over. You said 10.8 million, but I'm looking at your written testimony. Is that 108 million?
It's 108 million. I apologize if I misread that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much for joining us today and for all of your service to our state and to our country.
My pleasure.
Appreciate your
Thank
time.
you. Thank the committee.
Deputy Adjutant General? Is that the appropriate title?
You got it.
Okay, great.
That's correct. We like lots of titles.
Yeah. I feel very, some
Yeah.
people like first names, some people like lots of titles, some people like somewhere in the middle, so welcome. Thank you.
I'll respond to anything. Hey, you respond. Yeah. So good morning. My name is Brigadier General Hank Harder, Harder. I am the Deputy Adjutant General of the Vermont National Guard, and I'm also on the military side, what's called the Assistant Adjutant General Air. So I'm the commander of all our air guards in the state. So I kind of wear two hats. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for the invitation to come and address this important issue. And really appreciate both General Knight and I the time that you all spend on these issues and in general. General Knight is traveling this morning, so I am testifying on his behalf and behalf of the Guard. I do have a prepared statement. You'll find, I think, that a lot of some of my testimony parallels Gary DeCoustis because a lot of those facts are taken from similar sources. And then I'll be obviously happy to answer questions. So taxation of military retirement and survivor benefits puts Vermont at a significant disadvantage when recruiting and retaining service members for our Vermont National Guard and bringing and keeping talent and experience in Vermont's workforce. And most of my comments are going to be National Guard centric, but I'm happy to comment on a broader range of topics as you please. Approximately 2/3 of the Vermont National Guard members are part-time. They are not only a part of our National Guard, but they are a vital part of our civilian workforce as well. Vermont, as you all know, has an acute workforce shortage in nearly every sector of the economy and every region of the state. Attracting and retaining more members of the Vermont National Guard will strengthen our state's workforce. Eliminating the tax on their retirement benefits means more may likely stay here after retirement and continue to be part of our workforce. At present, a majority of military retirees leave Vermont. Historic data from 2004 to 2019 shows incremental growth, as Gary mentioned, in our retiree population. Our numbers are from 2004 to 2019, 3,402, raising to 3,904. So 502 in 15 years. From 2014 to 2021, 475 members of the Vermont National Guard retired. Conversely, the total number of military retirees in Vermont experienced only incremental increase. In short, far more military retirees leave Vermont than stay. A small sampling of senior members of the Vermont National Guard in the last few years, and I'll give just a few examples. Lieutenant Colonel Jason Pelletier moved to New Hampshire. Chief Warrant Officer 5, Kim Siner, and her husband, First Sergeant Mark Siner, moved to New Hampshire. Brigadier General Dave Manfredi and his spouse Kathy moved to Maine. Colonel Joyce Merrill and her husband moved to Tennessee, and she just retired this past year in 2024. Former Deputy Adjutant General Ken Gregg and his wife moved to North Carolina. Chief Warrant Officer 5, Jim Woodworth, and his wife Kim moved to New York. There are many stories and examples like these. The loss of talent and revenue becomes a compounding problem. When these members of the Vermont National Guard leave Vermont, they take their pension and their spouse with them. They also take that experience, talent, and earning capacity with them. In addition to the military retiree numbers in the past year, the Vermont National Guard has lost 8 airmen and 58 soldiers who have moved out of Vermont for employment in other states to find more robust support systems and seek stability in retirement. For military survivors, spouses of deceased military members participating in the Survivor Benefit Plan, a widow or widower of a military retiree will receive about 55% of that member's retired pay. For example, a retired Sergeant First Class E7 receives about $4,600 a month in military pension. The survivor would receive roughly $2,300 of that amount, which is then taxed, further decreasing the benefit. We've worked to grow the Vermont workforce through partnerships with Vermont employers through our program called Partnered Recruiting Initiative for Military and Employers. And as you know, the military loves acronyms, so we call that PRIME.
The legislature.
In General Knight, what's that?
The legislature does.
Oh, they do too. Yes, yes, yeah. Acronyms everywhere. And General Knight, appropriately so, is very proud of that program. I think he heard about it in another state and brought it into our state. The program provides Vermont National Guard members and their spouses and working age dependents an opportunity for an interview with participating employers, our partners. At this juncture, we have 25 employers as partners and 55 employers in the queue pending partnership. This tells me that there's a significant demand in the very population we are losing. The challenge remains one of bringing talent to Vermont and keeping the talent we have here. The Vermont National Guard is invested in this effort. Vermont can and should make itself more attractive, specifically in the prior service military market. These are individuals who have completed their first term of service and are separating from the active duty military, normally a 4 to 6 year term of service. Not taxing military pensions is an important tool in making Vermont a destination for prior service active duty military members, as well as military retirees. The Vermont National Guard is focusing our efforts on recruiting specifically to this population of the junior to mid-grade non-commissioned officers and junior officers. Many are eligible to continue their military service as a traditional part-time member in the Vermont National Guard. These prior service members do not need to complete basic training and bring a depth of experience to Vermont and our Guard. They have a work ethic, some level of security clearance, and skills that can transfer into employment opportunities in Vermont. Further, this group typically falls into the exact age band that our state is looking to attract to live and raise their families. It is incumbent upon us to make Vermont attractive and work overtly to market Vermont and the Vermont National Guard to this prior service and retiree population. For example, Fort Drum, New York is our closest major active duty installation, and it is small by comparison to some others across the country, with a soldier population of around 15,000. Anticipating their annual attrition rate, those separating from the service, at around 12%. That indicates 1,800 soldiers separate from active duty service at Fort Drum every year. In consideration of other active duty installations for both Air Force and Army across the globe, the number becomes exponential. Thus, our interest in reaching out to them. For an active duty retiree who serves for 20 years to earn a traditional longevity retirement, many are in their late 30s and early 40s. If they join the military between 18 and 21 years of age. This population, if we can attract them, have another career ahead of them in the civilian workforce and would be contributing to our tax base through their civilian jobs. Vermont must address its demographic crisis of fewer working age residents and a growing number of senior citizens. There are simply not enough workers to keep our economy going and growing. For our state to be more affordable and attractive to the population we need, I ask that this crisis be addressed with a sense of pragmatic urgency. Having military pensions exempted from taxation provides a valuable tool to both Vermont and the Vermont National Guard to do just that. Incentivizing military service and post-service employment by reducing the tax burden makes sense, especially considering that the vast majority of other states provide greater tax benefits to military retirees. The way I look at it is an investment in the future. And it's hard to forecast hard numbers that you can count on. But I would say, and this is my personal opinion, in 5 to 7 years, you would find many more working age military retirees either staying or coming to Vermont. By leveraging the marketing capacity of our state government and the Vermont National Guard, I believe we can make Vermont a destination for both military retirees and prior service members of the military who can continue service in our Guard. The Vermont National Guard can grow opportunities for Vermonters, our employers, colleges, and universities, and increase our capacity and capability to respond to both our domestic mission here in Vermont and our federal missions. This would also add tens of millions of dollars to the approximately $152 million in pay and allowances currently coming to Vermont from the Vermont National Guard annually. While not taxing military pensions is not a cure-all, it will provide us a valuable tool to keep talent we have and bring talent to Vermont. Thank you very much. And I did want to comment, Madam Chairman, you asked if there was something else that a non-20-year military retiree can bring. And this is something was added, a tool about 4 or 5 years ago. It's called the blended retirement system. So for example, if I did 10 years, either in the active duty or the Guard, and I wanted to make a pivot and leave the service, it's basically a 401k that you would bring with you. So there is something for those folks that don't stay for that traditional earned pension.
I think my question was, actually, is there a tax benefit or non-tax benefit, a program, a benefit that the state could offer for those 34,000 veterans rather than this much smaller and often wealthier population of military retirees? Because I think it's really important that the state do more than honor folks with words, that we actually make sure that our state is working for folks.
Agreed. And I would volunteer to be on an ad hoc committee to look at options.
But you don't have any top of mind.
You know, it's interesting, and I think, with Bob Burke here, and he's been in this lane and doing such a good job for our veterans for so many years. And I didn't want to mention it there. I'll mention it now, but I know it's specific to veterans benefits, and Bob can correct me to 100% or give me an F on this. But I believe, and this is small, but it makes a difference. I think certain states, when you register a new car, oh, you're a veteran, we're not going to charge you the state tax on that. I don't know if that, I believe Bob.
We actually do have something like that in Vermont.
Okay, and I don't, I just,
Okay.
yeah. So those type of small gestures, but they make a difference to veterans.
Yeah, we do actually have a very comprehensive list of small gestures that I was sort of shocked to find when I asked someone to read through statute. And we're wondering about
what else we could,
things that are not gestures, but are in fact meaningful supports.
So we would welcome it.
Yeah, okay.
So this isn't for you, Hank. I see that Gary DeGasta is still on. And he's the chair of the Governor's Veterans Advisory Council, and they have a booklet. And it describes all the benefits that when a veteran comes to Vermont or gets out of the military and comes home. And it's a booklet with all their access for counseling, for the VA hospital, that's pretty handy.
Absolutely. And I'm actually an ad hoc member of that committee, so I should be aware of that booklet. So I'll definitely get one from Gary. And one thing I will just say from the big VA, it's not necessarily the state of Vermont, but I'm both a veteran and a serving guardsman now, but things like the Lakeside Clinic, that is an arm of the VA hospital at White River, that's off of Pine Street in Burlington. Obviously, Chittenden County is our most populous county, but that makes it much more convenient for veterans that are servicing healthcare to be able to go to that clinic rather than always have to travel to White River. So those things matter.
And that's a federal issue and not something.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Representative Maslin.
Couple comments. Thank you for your comment when you sat down through about mid-grade retirees or something like that. I appreciate that sense of humor. At least I regard it as a sense of humor. Some of us here, I consider myself a mid-grade representative, been here well, but not. Anyway, just in comment, but I can say I've been here in Ways and Means quite a period of time, listened to this testimony for a while, and it's not one thing or another thing that's beginning to tip the balance here. We've had some members in this committee who are very much opposed to what you're proposing, and but the more this country is engaged in conflict here, there, and everywhere, and we hear more of your personal studied stories like from Jed. The more I guess it's right now. The weight of your cumulative testimony, sir, begins to make quite a difference. So thank you for your presence here.
Well, I appreciate that. Anecdotally, and once again, I grew up in Connecticut. I came up to Vermont in the 80s to go to UVM and fell in love with the state. Always wanted to serve, always wanted to be a pilot in the Air Force and the Navy. My emotional home is Saranac Lake, New York, because that's where we spent our summers. But very quickly came to love Vermont. And I'm not being hyperbolic when it's sad to me that my colleagues that have Vermont connections, and you heard a few of their names, but sometimes they make plans 2 or 3 years before they're retired to go to other places like Tennessee. And there's a variety of reasons to go other places. But I do feel that if you all would give consideration to this, I think it would make a difference. I really do for some folks. Yeah.
Representative Phillips.
Can you just clarify something for me about the National Guard? I'm more familiar with the active duty military sequence, but you describe someone who spends 6 years in active duty and then comes and joins the Guard. And they participate in the Guard as a part-time activity. Then when they get to the 20 years, are they considered a Guard retiree?
Yes, ma'am. They take all those points for their 6 years of active duty with the points towards retirement.
Right.
And then let's say they spend that, the rest of that balance of 20 years in the Guard. And what we say sometimes, and it's often more than this, but when we're trying to attract somebody to the Guard, do you have 39 days? Do you have 39 days to come into the Guard? And that's every drill weekend and 2 weeks of annual training. Now, since 9/11, most every soldier and airman has done more than that. But yes, ma'am. So then when they reach 60, which is a young, sir, to your point, a young working age 60. I was just saying, when this retiree reaches the ripe young age of 60, they have another career ahead of them and ready to do other things.
And so they can qualify for a National Guard military retirement, which I presume is less than someone who had been.
It is less. They get those points. Yes, ma'am. It's basically prorated, if you will, for all those military times. And then, guardsmen and women deploy. So I just got the privilege to welcome about 240 of our airmen back yesterday at the ramp and shake their hands. And so those will be 4 months of duty time that we'll add on. So those different things all count. But yes, it'd be less than somebody that spent 20 full-time years.
Okay, thanks.
I think Representative Odie, you had
That was the question that I had.
okay. Representative Kimball, then Brannigan, then Maslin.
Thank you, General. A couple of questions for you. You mentioned in some of the people that chose to retire out of state, one thing you said is support systems. So I'm wondering if that was family support systems, was it state support systems, federal support systems? What are you referring to then?
Yeah, I think probably it's just being a smaller state, there are other states that they might be able to find, more numbers of support systems in a
Yeah.
place like Tennessee or South Carolina. Being a small state, some of our folks would have to travel to find those support systems. General Knight and the Guards worked very hard with our family readiness folks at the Guard, and we do a great job. One slight negative is that we just don't have an active duty military base, and sometimes it's that being able to go onto a base as a retiree to use the commissary and the other facilities that are open to retirees. Now I recognize those are federal type installations that they're able to leverage in bigger states that have closer active duty military bases. And once again, not setting up Bob, but Bob I think has a good recognition of how do we compare in other New England states and that kind of things. But I think in general, what you'll find in some other states is that there just are more benefits for, and some of my homework will be able to go and look what are specifically some of those statewide benefits that are available to military.
And that's fair. I mean, often when we talk about why does somebody move, the promise of a better life, they've got support services there, whether it's family or that kind of stuff, for the community they're moving to is more in line with their values, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Kind of matters.
Yeah. And just a comment, let's face it, I mean, I think Vermont, although our weather can be challenging, I mean, you're not going to find a more beautiful state in the union and people with good hearts here.
Yeah.
And so that's a large part of it. And I think if the fiscal piece was better for some in their forecast, that they would consider.
So my other question is Fort Drum. So it's like 4 hours away anyway. So why Fort Drum? Is it just the nearest, largest base?
Exactly, sir. It's just the nearest, largest base that our recruiters can go to. And they have transition days for soldiers who know that they're going to be separating for the regular army in the next 12 months. And they know that a lot of these folks are of high working age and they're going to need to go do something. So the U.S. Army welcomes basically career fairs, and we're there when we can with our recruiters to say, hey, in this prime program, why don't you think about Vermont? Think about coming to work for Husking and injected moldings, and then we'll get if you join the Guard, we'll get you as long as you qualify an interview with that program. So we're trying to do anything we can because we're a small population and we've had troubles recruiting for both the Army and the Air. Anything we can to draw that kind of service age folks here to Vermont.
If they're not coming to Vermont from Fort Drum, do you know where they're going?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I would imagine a lot of them probably go to their home of record and maybe go and live and work there. But then some, a lot, in general, the southern states provide more incentives to military retirees to come in and work and live there. And it's just cheaper living in general.
And what are those incentives other than military retirement, income exemption? Feeling like a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I just think in general, I think as I stated before, is that the breadth of, and once again, I'll do some homework and try to, but that certain states do have more veterans benefits that are available, cheap tickets to baseball games and football games. Now, that kind of thing. Now, I'm sure that, down at the New England Patriots, and I know there are still deals within New England for folks that are military, either military card holders or veterans. Yeah.
I think it's my turn, Madam Chair. Is that
Great. I've totally lost track of
that. Thank you for coming this morning to be with us. I really appreciate your testimony. And so my name is Carolyn Brannigan, and I represent the Franklin County communities of Georgia and Fairfax. So just for your information, you may not be aware of the fact that Franklin County used to have an Air Force base. We have, and you can still see the remnants of it for miles. They look like golf balls on top of St. Albans Hill. And the local children love those, love to see those. And however, the economy, when that base closed for good, I mean, there was a long history there of when there were fewer and fewer airmen stationed up there. Then they closed completely. And that was a big hit to the community. The restaurants, the movie theater, that was the days when St. Albans used to have a lot of shopping on Main Street. That shopping now has gone away. I think largely because of the loss of those servicemen and their families. It's really it was devastating to Franklin County, but we're picking up. And I also want you to know that I have in my district, Georgia and Fairfax, several military former servicemen and retirees. And you know what? They contribute. They serve on the select boards, the fire department. They love to serve on the volunteer fire department. It's small, there's no pay, but they serve anyway. And they're great. They know a lot about safety and I mean, they're the ideal members. And I'm just so proud of them and so glad to have them. I have, well, like my dad served in World War II, but no one since him has served. And I didn't even really know much about his service until after he died. And I was doing genealogy research and I learned why he never talked about it. It was terrible. But anyway, they're brave and they're good. And you've probably picked up that around the table, we are looking for something that is common ground that we can put into this bill that will help these retirees and maybe all the other servicemen too along the way. So if you can think of something, it will help my county, help my district, and it will, of course, help these soldiers too.
Yes, ma'am. I very much appreciate your comments and when you were speaking, I in my time, I was joined the Guard in '89 and I was back from training in the '90s. But I remember when Plattsburgh Air Base closed, and I know that was a huge hit to the city of Plattsburgh. And so no, I appreciate your comments and we're on the same page. I mean, there's so much crossover from the training that regardless of the service, Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, that folks can bring that kind of work ethic back to wherever they stand and be part of the fabric of the society. And here with our guardsmen, both our part-time and full-time guardsmen, so many of them have businesses, are part of the fire departments, auxiliary police officers, that kind of thing. So yeah, we like the fact that they all contribute. So I
So
appreciate it.
flexible, they can do anything. I know some of them who jump into the plow trucks. When we have a night when it snows all night and they can't get out to the town roads it's the former servicemen who are there volunteering to drive the plow trucks.
Right.
As firemen. I mean, they're really great.
It's always great stories to hear. Yes. If I can add.
I have a question for, I'm gonna jump in front of you, Representative Maslin. In our significant work that we've done to lower corporate taxes for Vermont located businesses, I was surprised to learn how many military contractors we have in Vermont, whether that's manufacturing or sort of more consulting services. And I'm wondering about how your recruitment efforts, if you're sort of recruiting on behalf of those corporations and how that all fits together when you're doing your.
I wouldn't say we're recruiting on behalf. I mean, what comes to mind, Madam Chair, is OnLogic, which is just off the highway up in 89. Started by here in Vermont, and they're doing, as I understand, they do a lot of defense work. It's some of the events that we go to. I've exchanged business cards, and we would love to have some of their folks join us. And we actually have guardsmen and women that work full time for OnLogic and then come into the Guard. So a lot of those skills are transferable. Both the Army and Air Guard have cyber squadrons, cyber defense squadrons. So in some of that higher tech areas, if there's industries like that with Global Foundries and OnLogic, Beta Technologies, we have quite a few guardsmen and women that work there either full-time or part-time, but are also part of that.
There's a large company in Virgins as well, right?
I'm sorry?
No, there's
Oh, yeah, yes, and now that's changed names. I believe it's not Simmons anymore, but yeah, Goodrich and it's a different name. Yes.
But you don't do sort of paired recruitment with them at all?
That prime programs, I think we're working with employers all the time, and every time we get a chance, we're trying to educate employers about the value of the Guard that we can bring folks here. So I would say that prime program is one area where we're working with employers to see what are their needs. We have an honorary commander program in both the Air and Army Guard, and that's one way that we bring in business leaders, academics, just community leaders in general, and we're able to educate them on the Guard, but then educate them on our challenges as well, which is recruiting. And so we hope we can partner with any business that wants the type of folks that would want to serve in the Guard. And we know it's not for everybody, but we want to at least educate the folks.
And no one from any of those companies is asked to testify here today, but I imagine that they would be in favor of this tax benefit.
I believe so, ma'am. And certainly, and I don't know, I don't know how much more time of deliberation or testimony you have, but some of our honorary commanders would love to come in and testify. So if that's an opportunity, we can.
I think it gets slightly awkward to have people sort of requesting tax relief for themselves personally. And so I've tried to focus our testimony on folks who are sort of representing folks who would get tax relief.
Yes, ma'am.
That
Yeah, and
is a slightly tidier.
yes, no, understood.
Yeah.
Understood. And I think our honorary commanders, because, none of them are serving and, but they all have grown appreciation for the Guard. I will say, I really respect the general tax policy principle that we tax on percent of income and not category. But in this case, I would urge a rare exception because of the unique circumstances in this area. And, hopefully it is an investment.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Maslin. I skipped you and I didn't go back.
Sir, have you read J. Francis Anger's book,
No, I have
Into
not.
the Wild Bloom? I'll see you get a copy.
Okay, well, thank you. I've heard of it, Into the Wild Bloom.
You'll find it fascinating.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You can pass it.
Excellent. Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your service and your time here.
Appreciate it.
So folks, we're gonna take a break until 10:30.
There you go.
It's that.
If my agenda is.
Get it back.